Yo, what's up? It's your boy Two Beast, and I wanted to do a little prediction video for Tracy Cortez versus Erin Blanchfield 2. It's going down Saturday night, UFC 322. I believe this is gonna be the prelims. So they got early prelims, then main card. So I think this is the prelim fight. Um, the first thing I predict ultimately is that the fight will be a lot better than some of the naysayers are going out and saying, oh, it was a boring fight. First off, if we want to start with Erin, I mean, Erin is not by any means, in my opinion, a boring fighter. Like, I feel like if you think she a boring fighter, then I feel sorry for you, you know what I'm saying? Like, your expectations of an MMA fighter just way too high, you know what I mean? She always comes forward, puts on pressure, looks for takedowns to try to implement her grappling, but is very willing to keep a fight standing if it has to be. You feel what I'm saying? So Erin Blanchfield, she's going to bring the fight. And then this matchup, to me, is so interesting, right? Like, I feel like really for both fighters, like, this is a great matchup to, get a W and keep momentum going and stuff like that. Like, neither one are like super dangerous elite strikers per se. You feel what I'm saying? So, you know, both of them having a lot of success with grappling slash wrestling over the course of their careers throughout UFC. This is obviously a good matchup for both of them. On Tracy Cortez's side, one thing that I really noticed that, bothers me a little bit that people are forgetting is, you know, everybody's paying so much attention to the Rose Namajunas fight, man. And I'll be the first one to admit, like, I refer to common opponents and put a lot of weight on it usually in a lot of my personal assessment of fights and how they're potentially going to go. But this time is an exception because, in my opinion, Rose Namajunas fought the easiest possible version to beat in that of Tracy Cortez that you could possibly get an opportunity to fight. I mean, this is best case scenario for a Tracy Cortez opponent is basically what I'm getting at. People are like, oh, she was already scheduled to fight anyway and blah, blah, blah. But it's a huge difference between 3 rounds and 5 rounds. I mean, some fighters will be like, oh, I don't care. I could do 3, I could do 5, whatever. But it is a major difference in terms of game planning. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you got to start faster if it's 3 rounds versus 5. You got time to really adapt throughout the fight when you talking 5 rounds and this, that, and other. Like, there's a lot of differences. So to me, it's significant. And then on top of that, there was a no elevation versus a high elevation fight. You feel what I'm saying? It went from not so much elevation to elevation. It went from 3 rounds to 5 rounds. It went from a striker a fighter whose striking is, around the average slash slightly above average in Miranda Maverick to a striker who, managed to find a knockout on Wei Lee, the person who's fighting for a title this Saturday. You feel what I'm saying? So big difference in skill level when it comes to the striking. And then we saw that when those two fought, that being Rose versus Miranda. So clearly 2 different strikers, like 2 different styles. And Tracy Cortez has said that, she puts everything in the hands of her coaches in regards to the game planning, the film watching, da-da-da-da-da. So all of a sudden, 1-2 weeks, they got to completely turn around everything and, come up with this all new game plan for a much better striker who's a lot more slick on the feet. And just a different situation, and also 3 rounds to 5 rounds. So, and then Tracy Cortez is also someone who I think we can all agree, it's a challenge for her to make the weight. It's not like the easiest weight cut in the world. She's not like necessarily Valentina, who maybe cuts 8-10 pounds, day before weigh-ins. You feel what I'm saying? So that is a tricky process. Like, when you're weight cutting, as much as I'm against it, there is a process to it. And when you make a drastic change to that process, especially for someone who has a lot more weight to cut, and it's a much more difficult process for them in general, that's huge. When you go from getting to the specific weight you need to day before weigh-ins, and you bump it up a week, and that person already has difficulty making weight, it makes a huge difference is what I'm getting at. So you had the bump up in that time, and on top of that, to factor in the 5 rounds and the elevation, going back to my initial point, she had the best case scenario, that being Rose, to fight Tracy in. Whereas Erin, Rose was basically fighting the best version that you're going to get of Erin. Erin had a full training camp, knew about the fight well in advance. You feel what I'm saying? Like, just had that 5-round experience with Manon, which, she was probably had an opportunity to take a lot to learn from in that fight, and then go into the fight with Rose with all of that. Whereas Tracy had never been 5 rounds. You feel what I'm saying? So that's why I can't put so much weight on the Rose common opponent factor when I assess Tracy versus Erin. So that's that. And then also, Tracy just won her last fight against Viviane Araújo. And the reason why that's relevant is because, Vivi's went 5 rounds with Alexa Grasso, former champion, made it very competitive, you know what I mean? And then on top of that, she just beat Karine Silva, who a lot of people felt would be at the top of the division at some point. And, Vivi managed to turn her away. So point being, Vivi is not like some bum or some like, bad fighter necessarily. Like, she's a legitimate top 10 fighter. So Tracy just went out there and 30-27'd her. And as you guys know, I'm a huge Natalia Silva fan. I mean, just to make a point, Tracy Cortez 30-27, and Natalia actually dropped a round to Vivi. So, and she's basically the number 1 contender, if you ask me. So the fact that Tracy went out there and beat someone who won a round against Natalia, I mean, that's very relevant. She controlled the stand-up and the grappling, so I just don't buy into this narrative that Erin smashes Tracy. I mean, it is MMA, so maybe there's a flash submission. Maybe, Tracy's off this night. Maybe she's not as good as I think she is. But to me, I think this fight is a lot closer than people make it out to be, just based on the things that I've mentioned in this video thus far. So my overall pick is Tracy, because I'm going more so off of her wins as opposed to her only loss. Because when you think about it, this is her only loss we have to go on. You know what I'm saying? So, and if you rewatch that fight, in round 4, it was very competitive. So as the fight went on, Tracy actually got a little bit better towards the end. And this is once again someone coming off of, basically having a 2-week short notice, and going from 3 to 5 rounds and from regular elevation to elevation. And she was able to get stronger as the fight went on and actually make it more competitive towards the end. You feel what I'm saying? So me, I take more positive out of that Rose fight than negative. You know what I mean? So that's just me. And because of all that, yeah, I'm going to pick Tracy, because based on her most recent wins as opposed to her recent loss, she showed a massive improvement in her hands and her striking overall. And I feel like Tracy has the defensive grappling to, potentially get on top of Erin and be safe with it. Rack up control time and a little bit of ground and pound here and there and steal rounds. You know what I mean? And also when you think about it, Melissa Gatto, she's got pretty good BJJ off her back, and Tracy was able to avoid getting submitted there. So I feel like Tracy can be safe enough on top to just steal these rounds. And then as far as the stand-up goes, I'm basing it off of who has the crisper striking. And the fact that Erin is a lot more hittable than Rose. Rose was real tricky, and especially in a situation where the short notice and all those factors. So Tracy obviously had a much more difficult time with her, but Erin's a lot more hittable. You know what I mean? So I feel like when you give her a much easier target to hit, Tracy's going to shine in the stand-up. We've seen it in her last 2 wins. You feel what I'm saying? So based on that, I'm going to go with Tracy. I do acknowledge, though, that this fight can absolutely go either way, but I'm going to lean a little bit slightly towards Tracy, like maybe 55-45. You know what I mean? It's close, so my pick is Tracy. But overall, my guarantee is that it's definitely going to be an entertaining fight. It's 2 beasts.